Oh, hi. Welcome to Aquatazoo, where we like to nerd out over all things zoo and aquarium related. I'm l.semple, and today I'd like to talk to you a little bit about insurance in zoos and aquariums. First off, I must apologize. I had to disappear for a little bit. The combination of work and school and a little bit of illness in there as well made it so that I couldn't really get to the microphone and make the episodes that I would like to. So, apologies. If you hear any stuffiness still in my voice, well, it's been a while. And I'm just going to push through anyway. So sorry about that, but I'm back. Let's talk about insurance. Yay! Okay, why are we talking about insurance? I just thought it was an interesting topic for anybody who really wants to know deep dive into what's happening behind the scenes at a zoo or aquarium, because there's a lot of businesses in general, not just zoos and aquariums, where you don't think about the types of liabilities or problems that could happen and the types of insurance that might be needed to make sure that the day-to-day activities are safe and everything's good and everybody's covered, so that when there is an issue, a disaster or an accident or something like that, that the business doesn't have to close because they have to pay for legal fees and, medical stuff, all that kind of junk. So let's just talk about what liability, what issues there may be, and how those are handled from an insurance perspective, because it's probably more than any of us have ever really thought about. And I will say, I am not necessarily an expert on this portion of zoo and aquarium operation. I'm more of an animal care kind of gal, but it is something that we have had to deal with, that I've dealt with in my past a little bit, just opening new exhibits and trying to plan for the future. A cost of a building, let's say, or the cost of a gallery is a lot more than just putting in an exhibit and a bathroom, all the amenities for the guests, amenities for the animals. It's more than that, right? There's a cost to operating it. There's a cost to insuring it. That includes the animals themselves. And so there's a lot more planning that needs to go into how these spaces will work and what types of animals will be there, where they're coming from, and technically what's their monetary value. We don't necessarily think of animals like that on a day-to-day basis, but for insurance purposes, we kind of have to guess. It's, I guess, no different than, when you get life insurance for yourself as a human. You have to figure out, like, what's it worth? What am I worth? What is the kind of coverage that I want to get? And so, even though obviously a life is invaluable, like, it's priceless, and we love that, it's not necessarily something that jives with your insurance. Of course, we'd rather have nothing happen to you or the animals or anything like that. But when we're trying to get coverage for everybody involved, we have to assign dollar amounts to things. And so, and people and animals, just to make sure that we've got enough set aside to handle any issues that might arise. Okay, well, first off, we'll go with just operating a commercial type business. Yes, it's likely a nonprofit. A lot of our zoos and aquariums are, and some of them are not. And whatever the case may be, there's going to be insurance for operating a business, right? So we're bringing guests in and we're doing business, and we're running gift shops, we're taking tickets. There's a lot of money exchange going on. It's a commercial property, like, we're using it for commercial purposes, and people are parking on our facilities grounds and that sort of thing. This all depends on the specific facility and the location where it is, the local laws wherever they are. That all plays into this, right? So more than likely there's some insurance involved with just maintaining a business, and that's where we start, right? It's just, we're paying for tickets to go into that facility, we're paying for gift shop items, we're paying for snacks, all of those things that constitute a regular old business. We're paying insurance to just do that kind of stuff, so that if something were to go wrong, we have the coverage for that. Since we have guests coming in and we have staff involved, we have general liability insurance as well. So guest slips and falls on a floor, or, kids are jumping all over stuff and they hit their face on a wall or something like that. If you've ever watched kids in a zoo or aquarium, you know what I mean. But, we have insurance for that. Like having just people around, a lot of people around, inviting them into our spaces, we want to have just general liability coverage for that, because if somebody hurts themselves or needs some assistance because, they fell off a curb or something like that, you just want to have general liability insurance for that, so that, you don't have to fork out $20,000 for somebody's CT scan or something right then and there. That's why we have this kind of general liability, because stuff happens, people do crazy things, and when you're inviting a whole bunch of guests into your facility or through your gates, and they are going to do what people do, which is try to break everything, and that includes themselves, then yeah, that's what happens. So we try to make sure that we have coverage for that, to make sure that we don't go out of business because somebody decided to, film some kind of challenge from Instagram on the grounds of the facility. So that's why we need to just make sure we have your general commercial property type coverage, your general liability type coverage. I will say that the liability involving the staff is probably going to be higher than your average business, right? We've got people working on ladders. We've got electricians. We've got construction folks. We've got animal care people who are constantly in danger. Now, we do everything we can to lessen that danger as much as possible. So, we're working in pairs or groups. We're trying to make sure we have all the correct tools, that we're doing everything according to, standard as far as like occupational safety and health. We're trying to make sure that we're doing things as well as we can. However, we are working with wild animals, and we're just put into situations regularly that are more dangerous than your average, say, office space, right? So, fun story. Once upon a time, I used to work for a municipality, and at one point during my time there, they had somebody, this was part of a city situation, they had the city safety guy come in to basically tell us that we were not doing well as far as safety went, because we were costing the city, for whom we all worked, more money in our little department, which was the aquarium, than anybody else in the city. But that included a lot of office folks, some parks and rec people, people who do city stuff, right? We just happened to be in an aquarium that was also part of a city. And then they came in to say that per person, our department had the most injuries in the city. But that's not taking into account the fact that we got, a lot of office folks working for the city as well. You're comparing, jobs with wild animals to people who are working in accounting, right? And that's not to say anything poorly about anybody who works in accounting. If that's your thing, go for it. But you get what I mean. There's a lot more danger involved and a lot more risk of injury involved with the aquarium or zoo work than there would be for your average office space, right? So in general, we have a little bit more liability for that, because people will slip on the ladder, people will fall in a puddle on the floor, animals do crazy stuff. You never know. I worked with a lovely person who, while we were doing an exam on a rattlesnake, one of the rattlesnake's fangs broke and it went to strike. It was contained, so everything was fine, but because of that broken fang, the venom from the snake sprayed in this coworker's eye. She was fine. It was okay. But that's our day-to-day trying to do a health check on a rattlesnake. It was just a normal physical. There was nothing wrong, but we just wanted to make sure that we had this animal well taken care of and that it was in good shape. And in the midst of it, it got mad, struck at this tube that it was in, broke its own fang, and then, don't worry, they do grow back, it's fine. But broke its fang and then accidentally sprayed a coworker in the eye with venom. Now, if you need to know about venom, it has to be injected into into the blood or into the muscle somehow for it to be particularly dangerous, but we were very, very careful about it. We had that poor girl flushing her eyes for like 45 minutes just to make sure. So anyway, it's just, we were going about our business trying to be safe. We had the animal secured properly and all that fun stuff. It was just a fluke that the animal broke its fang and then it was able to spray venom out. So we tried to make it as safe as we could. We were doing everything according to our safety protocols. Weird stuff happens sometimes. And so there you go. You have a little bit more problem, I guess, or more risk when you're working with wild animals than you would be if you were just in a regular office setting. Therefore, insurance stuff such as workers' compensation and all that kind of thing is a little bit higher. And by a little bit, I mean a lot higher when you're considering a zoo or aquarium as opposed to, say, a library, right? So yes, we both have guests coming in. Yes, we both have staff that are working. It's a very similar vibe because we're inviting the public into our space, but then the work for the staff is very, very different. So oftentimes that is why we have very robust insurance when it comes to that sort of liability and workers' compensation and that kind of thing, because if something is going to go wrong, the chances of it being kind of bad are pretty high. After all, in most jobs, you don't deal with envenomation as a potential risk. But you do for zoos and aquariums. That is one of the things that we might run into in our careers. So we have to be ready, because some of these injuries, if they were to happen, and we do everything we can to make sure that they don't, but if they were to happen, they would be very expensive and vaguely catastrophic, right? So we try to make sure we have the best insurance that we can to make sure that we have everything in place and ready in case the worst were to happen, despite all of our efforts to stop it. So this is one I'm still learning about. I feel like I learn something new every time it comes up, but when you're dealing with renovating areas or expanding areas or bringing in new animals and things, each one of those things, each one of those pieces to that puzzle is insured, right? And it's insured for a different amount depending on what it is. This one came to my attention years ago because we were in the midst of opening a new expansion where I was working, and it included some animals that I had never worked with before, right? That's already a challenge on its own because I got to figure out how to work with them. I got to do some research. I've got to ask around and see if anybody has taken care of them before, because I want them to do well, right? But I have not taken care of them myself, so I've got to figure that out, right? So I was working on that part and trying to figure what we were going to do, right? And then the animals came in and everything was going fine. And then I realized, because of the rareness of some of these animals, despite the exhibits that I was taking care of being on the smaller side for the expansion itself, there were lots of different types of exhibits, lots of different types of animals, but I worked for an aquarium at the time, so gallon for gallon, literally, my small exhibits were the most expensive of all of them. Now, that's not to say that it was expensive to install them, but the animals themselves and the life support involved, because there were multiple floors involved and all this other kind of complicated mess. Gallon for gallon, these exhibits, this small space in this big expansion area, was gallon for gallon the most expensive, the highest insurance rate. Like, it was kind of a fun fact for a while, but then I really thought about it and I was like, oh my goodness, it's a lot of pressure, right? You got to keep up with all these animals and do well and keep up with all the equipment, because each one of these pieces to this exhibit is expensive and is insured. And we want it to be successful. We don't want it to fail, because it is very expensive if that were to happen. Under normal circumstances, I wouldn't think too much about that because I know what I'm doing, usually. But at this time, these were animals I did not know. This was life support set up in a way, like I knew the components, but they were set up in such a way that I had never dealt with before. The gravity situation with all the life support components being on a different floor, then the exhibits themselves, and then the animals in the exhibits were ones that I hadn't worked with before, and I was trying to make sure I was taking care of them well. Everything was fine, but when they told me about the insurance situation with those exhibits, it gave me like a little lump in my throat. Like, oh my gosh, I'm in charge of so much. Like, there's so much that could go wrong, and they're putting it in my hands. And, I don't think the organization thought too much of it. That was my job, right? They had to give me the exhibit to take care of. Life support components, the animals, everything was mine to take care of because that's my job, right? But knowing how much those animals had been, I guess, appraised for because of their rarity, the zoo or aquarium down the street does not have the same type of animals, so I couldn't just get more, right? It would be an elaborate endeavor to obtain more of these particular types of animals. And so they were insured for a lot of money. So even though the exhibits that I was taking care of total was probably, I don't know, 7,000 gallons or so. And we had also opened another exhibit that was, 115,000 gallons. The animals in my exhibit, gallon for gallon, were more expensive than that giant exhibit, elsewhere in that same area that we were expanding. And so that was kind of an eye-opener for me. But just understand that the animals in a zoo or an aquarium are insured. The exhibits that they're a part of are insured. All the little components of the exhibit are insured. The equipment that we need to take care of them is part of the insurance. Like all of that. And it's kind of, I guess, liability. But there's also like mortality insurance, and you can have insurance for exotic species. And so I just want to mention that those are things, and it can get very specialized as depending on what you're trying to insure. But the building itself is going to be insured. The exhibits themselves are going to be insured. The equipment is insured. The animals are insured. The people working with the animals are insured. So as you're thinking about it, if you go through an average zoo or aquarium, like you hear the dollar bills adding up, right? It is an expensive endeavor to run a zoo or aquarium. I would say aquarium especially because they depend on mechanics 24/7 running for the health of the animals. If you lose power, you're not necessarily going to start losing your lions, but you will start losing fish, right? And I know obviously a lion is probably going to be insured for more than your average goldfish, but you get the idea. When you're walking through these facilities and you're taking a look around and you're enjoying that exhibit, just remember that there's a lot going on behind the scenes that includes the insurance for every piece of everything that you are seeing and not seeing. So all of the operation is insured. And so that's a lot of money. And that's why it takes so much money to run a zoo or aquarium than you might guess. Well, one of the reasons, I guess. Another type of insurance that the organization might need to take is professional liability, right? We've got veterinarians working on staff. We've got husbandry people working on staff. And yes, licenses and certificates and things cover a lot. It doesn't necessarily negate the fact that there needs to be professional liability coverage involved. And I'm not entirely sure if all facilities have this, but it is one of the things that we should have / those involved should have. So the veterinarians, the licensed vet techs, the people who are certified and have credentials for the specialized type of work that they do. That might be electricians. It might be plumbers. There's a lot of people doing lots of different jobs on the grounds of a zoo or aquarium, and it may require professional liability insurance because of the work that they do, the special skills needed to do it, the cost if there's a mistake, and or the danger of what they're doing. So having professional liability insurance helps with that. And so that is another cost that zoos or aquariums need to think about when they are considering what it costs to run and the types of people that they're going to have on staff. Because if they have certain types of people who have certain credentials, they're going to need a little bit of additional professional liability insurance to cover them should something go wrong. And of course, we hope that nothing does, but that's what insurance is about. You got to be ready for anything. And you have to have it in place before there's a problem. Another one that I honestly didn't think about, but I own a vehicle and I have insurance for said vehicle, and I never really thought about the fact that my employers also own vehicles that we, the employees, are driving. And so we probably need some auto insurance. So yeah, there's various types of insurance for vehicles. So I've worked for facilities that had boats. I've worked for facilities that have their own fleet of vehicles, be it cars, trucks, big rigs, like 18-wheelers. There's also, trailers and things of that nature that are extra. Golf carts. A lot of zoos have golf carts. So there's a lot of insurance that goes into maintaining all of these vehicles because, yeah, you have to have a driver's license to drive it. And then you have to have the okay. Maybe there's a little extra training for how to do it for the organization. But yes, it's the staff that are driving these vehicles and trying to maintain them a lot of the time. And so if you have vehicles that are being driven for professional purposes, then the organization for which they're being driven needs to have auto insurance for them and, vehicular insurance, whatever type of vehicle that might be. It might be a boat, which is a separate thing. So you might have a boat insurance. We've got trailers, we've got carts, we've got all these different types of vehicles. There might be trams and buses involved as well. Depending on the facility, where it's located, how they get their vehicles and how they use their vehicles will dictate what types of insurance they're going to need and how they're going to obtain that. But just know that if there is a vehicle that, especially if you're transporting any guests. So for some facilities where I've worked, we've had, those large 15-passenger vans or a small bus or something like that that transport, say, kids for a summer camp. That's pretty commonplace, and therefore we have to have insurance for that because we can't just be toting kids around whenever, wherever we want to without the proper coverage, because heaven forbid if something went wrong, then we don't have to depend on being in the financial position to be able to shell out a whole bunch of money for a bunch of people that may have sustained an injury or for a vehicle that might be damaged all at one time right up front, right? That's what the insurance is for. They kind of cover that. They do their investigation, figure out how they're going to sort this all out, and then it gets paid, right? So it's not such a crazy hit on the pocketbook right away, the organizational pocketbook, I guess. So yeah, if you have any kinds of automobiles, vehicles, whatever, then you've got some auto insurance and transportation type insurance for your facility. So I would say that these are probably the more common types of insurance that you would think about for running a zoo or aquarium on a day-to-day basis. Lots of liability coverage, which includes coverage for guests, staff, animals, the location, the equipment, all of that kind of stuff. And then you've got the business that you're running, because we're doing monetary transactions and, there's food involved, there's all kinds of stuff. Just having customers and guests in your facility, engaging with your staff and engaging with your facility. So there's insurance for that kind of thing. Just generally operating a business, you've got some business insurance. There might be more specialized insurance when it comes to exactly what types of animals you've got. So if you have an animal in your collection that's particularly rare or endangered or something like that, something that is really dangerous. Like, say, for instance, you're doing a conservation effort to reintroduce a species that's extinct in the wild. Those animals are insured because if we lose them, that's their entire genetic line, right? So we have insurance for that kind of thing, and it's notable because we do not want to mess anything up, right? So we have insurance for specific types of animals. We have insurance for specific types of jobs, depending on their credentials maybe. as to what kind of extra insurance they might need specifically due to the danger or due to the intricacies of the job. So like veterinarians and tradespeople. And we have like commercial auto. So whatever kind of vehicles we've got going on. Those are your average types of insurance that the zoo or aquarium most likely has. Now, there's other types of insurance beyond that, like flood insurance. A lot of our aquariums are located in coastal areas, right? And several zoos are as well. And so you've got extra flood insurance and bad weather and catastrophe. Some facilities have large events, right, at their institutions, and so there might even be insurance available for events being canceled because so much planning and money and all the preparation that goes into an event, having it canceled with no insurance can put the institution at really big risk, right? That's a lot of money just to be wasted, a lot of time just to be wasted. And so having event cancellation insurance does help. There might be special insurance involved during an animal transport. It's one of the most dangerous times for an animal because we need to move them from a facility to the wild or a facility to another facility. Just having them transported, it can be stressful, it can be dangerous, goodness, I hope they don't get in a car accident, but it happens. I've heard of transport trucks with sharks specifically getting into accidents and aquariums in the area having to scramble their vehicles to go and try and rescue sharks. It does work, and sharks have been saved that way, but it's extra dangerous for animals to be out on the road, right? Obviously contained in containers within the vehicle, but it's still dangerous. People drive crazy sometimes, so it is good to have a little extra insurance just because there's an animal transport going on. Some of our facilities just have general crisis response and emergency response insurance just because it takes so much to be able to respond to an emergency. Because I will tell you, there are things that happen within a zoo or aquarium, like something breaks and it's catastrophic and it takes out tons of equipment with it or makes something very, very dangerous that we need to get fixed immediately. And sometimes some of the equipment is specialized that we're working with, right? I have one pump that I work with that could cost me like $20,000, right? These pumps are no joke, but if they were to catastrophically fail, it puts all of the animals in my facility at risk almost. And I don't have a backup necessarily. Like I don't have one just sitting there ready to be put on because it's such an expensive piece of equipment. If it fails, I'm out of luck, right? Not really. We have insurance for this kind of thing. So if we have to push through a whole bunch of money all at one time, we file it on insurance and we just do the best we can. We get it fixed because it has to be fixed so that it does not impact the rest of our business, right? So emergency insurance for various different reasons. When you've got such expensive equipment and you need to get access to funds quickly, there can be insurance for that, right? So it's not quite the same as just regularly insuring your building and the equipment in it. It's more like we have a crisis, we need the money now. And so it kind of releases the funds a little bit faster than going through putting in your claim and the investigation and all that kind of fun stuff. So yeah, I just wanted you to know a little bit more about what's going on way behind the scenes. Even I don't know a ton about it, but I'm becoming more aware of it as time goes on. It's one of those things that we don't often think about, but we need to make sure that it's all in place and settled and good to go. So yeah, that's all I have to say about that. If you have any questions about that or any other zoo or aquarium things or leadership and management stuff, you can write it up in an email and send it to me at aquatazoo@gmail.com. If you're enjoying the show, and I hope that you do, don't forget you can follow or subscribe on your podcast player of choice. That way you'll get all of that sweet, sweet content as soon as it releases. If you'd like to support the podcast directly, you can find me at patreon.com/aquatazoo. And if you'd like to take a vacation and you don't know where to start, I happen to be a personal vacation advisor with Magical Vacation Planner, and I would love to help you out. It does not cost you anything extra. The links are in the show notes. Okay, thanks for listening. I heart your faces. Okay, bye.